carbon cycle is the natural cycle of carbon throughout the Earth and in its atmosphere. The carbon cycle is responsible for regulating the heat of the atmosphere and keeping it at an appropriate temperature. The first step in the carbon cycle is plants and bacteria photosynthesizing using CO2, water, and energy from the sun and releasing oxygen. After plants and animals decay, their CO2 is broken down by bacteria and is released back into the air. Animals and other organisms that respire breathe in oxygen and then release more CO2 into the air. After plants and animals die, their CO2 is broken down and the cycle begins again. Much of the CO2 that goes into the air ends up absorbed by the ocean as opposed to plants or going up into the atmosphere. When the sun rays come into the atmosphere, some of the energy bounces off of the clouds, some gets absorbed by the Earth's surface, and some bounces off the surface, taking the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Greenhouse gases are gases in the air that trap in heat by being heated by the infrared rays of the sun. Some of these gases include carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane. The energy reflecting off the Earth is hitting the greenhouse gases with infrared lights, causing them to vibrate, thus making less room for the sun's energy to come out of the atmosphere, trapping it in. The natural carbon cycle is what allows sentient life to continue living, because without it, no organism would be able to photosynthesize, killing all oxygen-breathing animals because there would be no cycle of oxygen. When humans burn fossil fuels, or coal trapped under the ground, that adds to the carbon in the atmosphere. Fossil fuels are formed when plants or animals turn into either coal, natural gas, or oil from pressure and heat. Fossil fuels are a combustible form of carbon that when burned release carbon dioxide into the air. When fossil fuels are burned, carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere, adding to the amount of carbon dioxide traveling through the atmosphere. Factories, gasoline companies, and energy companies use fossil fuels because fossil fuels are very rich in energy and require much less resources compared to opposing energy sources. Carbon dioxide is just one of the many greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Greenhouse gases are gases in the air that vibrate when hit by solar rays, trapping in the sun's heat. The natural carbon cycle is what is responsible for keeping the Earth at a healthy temperature, yet the influx in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has changed the carbon cycle for the worse. The carbon cycle implies that much of the carbon is fossilized underground, so when that factor is changed, the carbon cycle is hit very hard because it is no longer a natural occurrence. When the sun's energy bounces off of the Earth, like with the natural carbon cycle, some of the rays heat up the molecules in the atmosphere, so if there are more molecules in the air, that means less of the sun's energy can leave because more is being blocked. Climate forcings are the drivers of the climate. Solar irregularities, greenhouse gases, and aerosols, dust, smoke, and soot. Climate feedbacks are the result of climate forcings being altered. These can be either positive or negative feedbacks. With a warmer climate, one of the feedbacks could be more water vapor in the air, meaning this could radically change the climate because more water vapor means more clouds, and more clouds means more of the sun's energy bouncing back into space. Along with more clouds, water vapor is a greenhouse gas in and of itself. The more water vapor in the air means more heat will be trapped, resulting in more water vapor in the atmosphere. Another possible feedback could be the outcome of the ice caps melting. The more ice caps that melt means the more dark ocean water that is exposed, meaning more area to be heated up and less area to reflect light. This result is a vicious cycle with a strong feedback. Earth's tipping point, a point at which we abruptly change climate states, would be the result of climate feedbacks. If the ice caps continue to melt, one outcome would be that the ocean circulation in the Atlantic may divert the Gulf Stream. This would result in significant cooling in Western Europe. Along with altering ocean currents, if the ice caps continue to melt, we will reach a point of no return, where the sea level will continue to rise, displacing millions along the coastlines. Another possibility would be the permafrost in the Arctic melting, releasing frozen methane into the atmosphere. This frozen methane will begin to rot, releasing more methane into the atmosphere. Climate change is currently an incredibly controversial topic to discuss, in particular in the US, because of the strong stubbornness of climate change believers and climate change deniers. While there are thousands of pieces of data proving climate change is correlated with human cause, millions still don't believe in it, saying it's a hoax or it's a myth. One of the most prominent reasons for not believing in climate change is people saying that climate change is not real because they have not been able to feel it. How one feels doesn't necessarily matter, because looking at an actual graph representing the natural Earth cycle versus human contribution, the natural temperature is rather stagnant, with the human contribution there is a rather large influx. Another reason for not believing in climate change is that there is not enough proof saying whether or not climate change is real, therefore the science cannot be trusted. This is clearly wrong because only 3% of publishing scientists don't believe in climate change, making that 97% of scientists who do. Some of the remaining skeptics include religious people, stating that God is in control of the climate, and some other people saying that the facts spread by new organizations is all propaganda. Well, these are not necessarily true or false, so there is no hard science backing these claims up, so therefore there is no reason to be convinced of climate change being a hoax. Climate change is a serious matter, and if the people on Earth don't start taking it seriously, we will only make it harder on future generations to fix our mistakes.